Thank you very much. It's an honor that you are here, so many architects from Korea. How many hours did you fly to come here?
12.
12 hours, yes. I mean, it's really a huge effort. So thank you very much. I hope that we can do the same in the opposite direction. Okay, while preparing myself for this presentation, I kept thinking about the differences and also the similarities between our cultures. One difference, I think, is that we have our buildings rather in stone and, I mean, in materials. For example, the stone cathedrals of the medieval ages or of the Middle Ages, while you have rather mental architecture, rather ideas which are very important. I would just to say one thing. So it's from Japan. This is a grand shrine, which is rebuilt every 20 years, where the idea is more important because it's made of wood. And what I see in Korea, you also have many buildings rebuilt, or the lifespan of a building is not so long as in our culture. So, but you have well, there in Japan, the advantage is that you have the craftsmanship to reuse it every 20 years. And here we don't have any craftsmanship anymore. So if we deal with such buildings like that, then we have to use another kind of craftsmanship. And this is the point where we come together, I think, that what we are doing, we are forced to move on a mental or on an idealistic level in order to have any connection or more connections with the past. So this is, I think, a very important idea that we are moving towards towards Asia, towards Korea, how to tackle this problem of identities or cultural heritage. Actually, we are doing a lot of projects in our office. Yesterday, perhaps you have seen some modern buildings, contemporary buildings, but now we are dealing with monuments more and more, and it's actually fascinating for us because of this mental play with the past. As I was preparing my presentation, I thought that I'm going to present three buildings. One is not an urban regeneration, it's a castle in the province. The second one, we moved to one bigger city in Hungary, to Szeged. It's going to be a restoration of a cathedral. And then we come to Budapest, and we are going to deal with a building from the 1950s. So this is going to be also a kind of time span leading to our present tense. So this is the Esterházy Castle in Fertőd, very, very famous castle, so don't dare to touch it. We were lucky because we didn't have to deal with the central part, but with the part what you see here. But just to imagine how important the story for us is that for example, one international star back in the 18th century, Joseph Haydn, I think you know all of them, him, was in the service of the prince for 30 years, and he had to produce a composition per day and present it to the prince. So due to this huge workload, he had done a lot of compositions which are played everywhere in the world today. What is marked red here, this is the area what we have done in our project, and it was actually a one-story building where staff was and also storage areas. And what you see on the western wing, this was a picture gallery, and our task was to make a kind of exhibition space out of that. And the first question for us, how can we combine today's vision of spaces with the historical space? And we have this enfilade system from the Baroque period, and then we have these float spaces today, or from the modernist era. And what we have done, it's in the third dimension, because we have redone actually the ceiling, what you see in the axonometric view. And in a way that it's also combined with today's use of materials. This was the second question. If you have such a nice building like that, can you do the same as for example, 200 years ago? No, you have to do something else. So what you see on the left-hand side picture is the old way of how to make a Baroque ceiling. You can see a lot of sky, and we said, okay, the sky means for us light. That's why we use light. We have the same elements, but we use contemporary materials, and so we come closer to our contemporary use of materials, but we still have some references to the past. Yes, no, that's not the right direction. And now I'm going to tell you what has happened here. Actually, we have redone the entrance area leading to all directions, to the picture gallery, to the exhibition spaces, and to the toilets. And there we also redone some elements from the Baroque area. For example, what you see here, this is the chandelier, what you can illuminate then upwards and downwards. So you have two directions, but two different light installations or light effects. What is important in the Baroque is also illusion, and what you can see here, this reception desk, this is a perfect example of creating illusions. So these are small elements, but every element has a very strong reference to the Baroque way of thinking. Then this enfilade is a curved enfilade. We have found some paintings which had to be redone, and this was actually another space has been added, or the color has been added. You can see the blue one, the pastel blue one there behind. This is our let's say invention in order to make a seamless transition between these painted spaces with the white, quite normal exhibition spaces. And now we come to the most important part of our of work, where you can see that this kind of the sky, let's say sky or the ceiling, this barrel vaulted ceiling, and also the flooring come together, having another effect than it was. This is a deliberate thing, but we try to connect each element with the past. It's rather on the mental level, not on the material level, but this, we think, it's a very strong planning strategy in our office. And here you can see also the floor level reflecting actually the ceiling, and this pattern is also a historical pattern, but a small, slightly redone. For example, some parts of it is polished, very much polished, and some parts are matte. So this kind of reflection is not perfect. The question might arise whether it's a Baroque space, or how we collide Baroque space with the modernistic space. Then we say rather that it's a contemporary vision of a Baroque space. Our journey brings us to Szeged, to the south of Hungary, where we have done the restoration works for the Szeged Cathedral. There was about the history of this cathedral. Szeged was a historic city, but there was a flood in 1879, which destroyed the whole city, and it has been rebuilt by, let's say, European funds of that time. And this place is quite new, and this is, I mean, this was done later, in the 1930s, and both parts, the piazza and also the cathedral, are actually icons now of the city. And our task was to use the unused spaces in the cathedral. Sorry, I don't have the plan, the floor plan. You have to shut your eyes and imagine a classical Romanistic Romanistic layout of cathedral. But in the section you can see that we have a lot of unused spaces. For example, the undercroft, then the area in front of the church. Then we have the towers. The liturgical space, of course, it was used, but we had to make some kind of reuse of that. And we also had an urn cemetery, which was not at that place exactly. And we had also a 13th century tower, the Demetrius Tower, which was found actually while building the new cathedral, it's interesting because a Baroque church was there and it was demolished, you can imagine. Perhaps it's not such a crime in Korea, but in Hungary it was a crime. Baroque church demolished, but while demolishing the cathedral, they found actually the core of the tower, which was from the 13th century. So the result, what we have here, is actually a very clear interior, and we also had a few strategic questions that you can see here on the image. This was the rediscovery of neglected spaces and the reuse of the neglected spaces. And the second one was actually we were confronted with the diversity of inspiring spaces. Namely, the building was started before the First World War, before 1914, where actually this historicism was very present in Hungary. And after the First World War, there was an economic crisis, and of course it couldn't be continued. But then, in the 1930s, they made a tower, and actually from the ledge of the building upstairs, and there you can see there you can see this ribbed concrete ceiling on the right hand side of the picture, where these ribs are quite big, but in between you have a slab of 6 centimeters. Okay, it's actually not conform with Eurocode at all, but it still is there. And one of the main issues, it was a very small spot, was how to make actually a transition between the old and new. We have this flat modern structure in the reception area in front of underground and in front of the cathedral, and we have this vaulted structure inside. And our idea was to make a distorted surface in order to have this smooth transition between the two, and actually to do something out of the ordinary. This was very important. And another aspect was the decoration or the amount of ornaments. It is such an over-decorated interior, what I haven't seen before, as I went there in 2007 because of other reasons, because of another project in Szeged, but we went there just to have a look at the cathedral. And since the canopy, what you see on the right-hand side, has been replaced from the apsis to the middle of the church. Since it has been replaced, a new main altar has to be done. And the idea was not to make a very simple altar, but to use the idea of decoration. And we used actually contemporary methods of carving stone, but the pattern is actually a traditional one from local embroidery, what you can find in the vicinity of the city. And what has been done after answering these questions, making a tilted entrance to the entrance area or reception area. It is hardly seen from the square. And then we have also done a canteen for pilgrims. This is actually the so-called wrapping of the tower, the 13th century tower, with metal elements. They are not cortina elements, they are oil-burnt elements, so they are different a bit. They have a lot more craftsmanship if you come closer to it. And then we had also these terrazzo tiles, what you can see at the desk in the background, which also has a reference back to the 1920s and 30s. And here we have the exhibition area with exhibits and also the urn cemetery. It is a very nice curved space, which we actually just used. These are neglected spaces that we used. And one might say it's very abstract, but actually this abstractness emphasizes the forms. It is not possible anymore to create such spaces. And if we come to the tower, there are huge spaces, and in order not to make it so dull, every second level we introduced a new element. This is a kind of cabin inside. and there are places for 15 people inside, just for either for tourists or for the church itself. You can make even smaller, let's say, concerts inside. And this is a cube in the whole tower, in a cube. And now we say farewell to the church. This is what you can see if it's illuminated from outside, and you can see also the light coming through the stairs towards outside. And the last project, and I have very little time for that, this is the University of Design and Art in Budapest, and I'm going to highlight just one part of that, which is actually, for me, one of the most important parts, or one of the most interesting parts. This is in the middle. It is the so-called social realist era, which was very short, 3 or 4 years in Hungary, but it's a kind of disguise. It is a kind of classicistic building, but with a space layout of that time, and that was the problem and the challenge. This is the whole development. Actually, what we planned, 1, 2, 3 buildings and 1 underground building, and there were also some questions as for the strategy. What should we do with the building? First of all, respect the existing values. Socialist realist architecture has already values. I'm going to explain why. And then also the problem was that we had very conservative rooms for teaching, and I don't know how is it in Korea, but in Hungary still you have these very small compact rooms without any openness. But the university said we need total different spaces, and of course as a reference to László Moholy Nagy, he's one of the founders of Bauhaus. And he has studied here, not in this building, but he has studied in Hungary before. And actually his idea was the constant change, or the possibility for the constant change. And this was also very important how we tackled the spaces in the new buildings and also in the old building. And here you can see how the old building has been, or the old auditorium has been renovated. Some elements in the middle, I mean the corridor, were also renovated, for example the main staircase. Here you can see some very nice decoration, plaster decoration, which has been also, let's say, rescued. And what we have done as for the education and rooms is to open up. Perhaps you can remember one of the first pictures we had actually a corridor and just the classrooms. And what we have done, if you look on the right side, is actually we have closed actually the corridor. We have opened up both sides, and so you can have a fluid space. And what we have done with the space, we have removed a few slabs. So here you can see a stepping down of spaces, and thus we can connect all these spaces together. And here you can see the result, where you can see up. I mean, 3 levels are put together, combined together. And here we are on the next level, and you can see the attic. This is actually what we have won during the process. And if you have a diagonal view, then you can see also that a very interesting spatial situation. Anyway, space is very important in our office, so we speak a lot about that. And every project we try to make spaces. And what is the conclusion of these 3 projects? That we try to make a seamless transition between the historical and the contemporary. If I come back to the topic of this conference, then this is actually a kind of new, that we create a new identity by using memories of the past or of the old building. Thank you very much for your attention.